The anti-Rishi Tory MPs on the backbenchers are now escalating their rebellion against the Prime Minister as they are now ready to launch their motion of no confidence. Yesterday we did a video and we mentioned how the Tories are rebelling against Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt and the whole of Downing Street, and we say, oh, it's a weekly thing now at this point. But we now hear that they are taking it seriously and they are considering to launch a motion of no confidence. Why? Because of everything that happened last night with Boris Johnson and over the last few weeks with Suella Braverman, and they know that these sort of things happened in the past and it could happen again. And it's not just about Rishi Sunak or Jeremy Hunt, it's also about the so-called blob, the political civil servants, part of the establishment who have their own agenda and they have their own biases. So last night we obviously gave you a breaking news that Boris Johnson was reported to the police from the Cabinet Office. Earlier on we reported that Boris Johnson is going to be suing the Cabinet Office and the Rishi Sunak's government as he believes he has not broken the rules of, further rules of the lockdown and everything else when he was sick. This saga is never ending, and we know that. And I'm also tired of talking about it. I know it's frustrating, but it is getting serious now because it's no longer about Boris Johnson. It's actually about the so-called British deep state, the political civil servants, the mainstream media, the vested interests, and everybody else who are working together right now to make sure that Keir Starmer becomes our next Prime Minister. Now, people like Rishi Sunak or Jeremy Hunt, if they have a hand in this, they are the useful idiots because they think, well, we can just prevent Suella from doing a leadership challenge. We could just stop Boris Johnson from coming back. Yeah, but you're an idiot because they're going to make Keir Starmer Prime Minister. They're going to come for you next. So, what's going on now? The row has now blown apart. That they have the fragile Tory truce and the left and allies of the scandal-hit former Prime Minister. And firstly, we actually have to talk about the fact that Boris Johnson has recently been, his team has been leaking or briefing against the Prime Minister. GETTR has been talking a lot. His former ally, his former advisor, and he's got a new project, doing podcasts and stuff like that. And he's been revealing some of the conversations from the former Prime Minister about Rishi Sunak. We knew how dirty that was getting. So the timing of this stitch-up is interesting. Days after GETTR and obviously the others who've been briefing the paper saying, well, Boris Johnson said this about Rishi Sunak at the time, or Boris Johnson wanted to destroy Rishi Sunak's life at the time. Suddenly, they've decided to make a move and take their revenge on the former Prime Minister. So you don't have to be a Boris fan to know what's going on exactly, to be frustrated with the establishment, because it makes us think, well, it doesn't really matter who we elect. It doesn't really matter who we vote for. Even if our champion or hero becomes Prime Minister, then it doesn't really matter because the deep state is there to run the show or to prevent us from having what our politicians are promising us. Even if you like, for example, Richard Tice or Andrew Bridgen or Lawrence Fox or whoever you like, and the UKIP leader or Suella Braverman, it doesn't matter because unless we drain the swamp of the establishment, the same thing is going to happen again. Now, Tory backbenchers are now saying, well, we are now ready to call a motion of no confidence in Rishi Sunak to get rid of him because it's better to do it now before it gets too late. Although it is a bit too late because the elections are coming up now next year. So a senior Tory source said, Rishi Sunak is letting Tories get decimated on his watch by the blob. Dominic Raab, Suella Braverman, and now Boris Johnson again. When is this crap going to stop? It's time for Sunak to grow some balls. The latest developments could delay the verdict of the Commons Privileges Committee, which is investigating whether Boris Johnson lied to the MPs about what he knew about the lockdown flouting bashes in Number 10 and Whitehall. Let's not forget that the focus of the Sue Gray's investigation and this Privileges Committee chaired by Harriet Harperson, were mostly about Boris's birthday party, the so-called birthday party, where he just stood next to a cake for 10 minutes. And he could easily get away with that. But now they're coming for him with this police investigation. I don't think they're going to win this one. But politically, they are. Politically, they are completely destroying not just Boris, but also Suella and everybody else. Because it doesn't really matter. It's not about Boris Johnson. It's about all of us. It's about the fact that they are going to go, regardless of who you prefer, they're going to come for them. Now we're going to have this 1922 committee again. This is the committee in charge of the Tory parliamentarians in Parliament, and they trigger and run the Tory leadership elections and everything else that happens in House of Commons. They are now on standby to see how many letters they're going to receive. It's going to happen all over again. I mean, my prediction is I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Rishi Sunak is going to lose the vote, because the MPs are going to look around and think, well, the elections are coming up. It's highly unlikely that they're going to start another chaos. But considering how amateurish the Conservative has been over the last few years compared to the old school Tory party that used to rule the waves back in the day, decades ago, I'm not really sure exactly what they're going to do. A bunch of children run the show right now. So, Alex Chalk, who's the Justice Secretary, has now stressed that there was no ministerial involvement in the latest row. So, Alex Chalk, they've been sending him out to do the media rounds today because the Prime Minister and everybody else are hiding. They basically said, go out there and say we have nothing to do with this police report and everything else. He told the LBC that, well, there is this inquiry taking place. In the course of that documentation, it has to be scrubbed or reviewed by lawyers to ensure that it can be disclosed in the normal way. Material came to light which was passed to the civil service. So it sounds like he's implying that it was the right thing to do. The civil service considered that in accordance with their code and with no ministerial intervention. I want to make that absolutely clear. That was then passed to the police. He also says that from the civil services point of view, if they sat on it and suppressed it, people would have criticized them. If they pass it on, that will raise questions as well. Ultimately, whether it was the right judgment to do it turns on what's in those documents. He also says, and I've not seen those documents, so it's very difficult to make a judgment. So I'm afraid this has just got to take its course in the normal way. Okay, Alex Chalk, we're going to believe you for now until we find more evidence about this nonsense. As I also said earlier on in the first video, today's going to be quite interesting because I've done some digging and we're going to expose some of the names and figures inside the establishment, inside the British Civil Service, who may have some links with the outside world, political links. It's not the first time this has been mentioned, but we're going to talk about this because it's important for people to know the potential connections with the political left and establishment. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Mahyar, and we are the media.